Ron. Chapter 1. The Arrival. The storm had been raging for hours. Sheets of rain hammered the roof of the McClarty house, while wind sent the pines outside like booing giants. Inside, the fireplace flickered weakly, casting orange shadows across the walls. Jamie McClarty, barely 10, was glued to the window despite his mother's protest, watching the trees sway like they were alive. That's when he saw it. A shape in the road barely visible through the downpour. A dog, huge, hunched and soaked to the bone. It wasn't moving, just staring at the house like it had been for someone to notice. "Mom?" Jamie called, pressing a hand to the fog glass. "There's a dog outside." His mother, Leah, came over to him with the dish towel in hand. "The dog? Where?" He pointed. "There. Look, he's just standing there." By the time she turned to look, the dog was at the porch. They hadn't heard it move. Jamie darted for the door before she could stop him. "Wait!" he shouted. But the latch had already clicked. Cool air and wet pine swept the living room. There it stood, massive, easily the size of a Great Dane, but heavier like muscle coiled under a thick, bristly coat. Its fur was dark with streaks of red, caked with leaves and streaks of mud. But the strangest thing was its eyes. They weren't brown or gold or even blue. They were red. Not a warm, glowing red, but deep, like blood under ice. The dog stepped forward slowly, deliberately, and stopped just inside the doorway. It stared at Jamie, and at Leah. Then it sat. "Where's your collar, buddy?" Jamie asked softly, reaching out. Leah grabbed his wrist. "No, we don't know where he's been." The dog just looked at them, calm, still, not a twitch of aggression. It didn't bark, didn't pant, just waited. Jamie smiled. "His name is Ron," he said. "Red Ron." Leah blinked. "You just made that up." Jamie shook his head slowly. "He told me." Upstairs, the lights flickered. Fire dimmed for a second, sputtering like it had lost its will. The storm didn't stop for another 12 hours. By then, Red Ron had made himself at home, curled up at the front of Jamie's bed, eyes always half open, watching. Red Ron. Chapter 2. The First Death. The sun returned the next morning, shy and pale, behind a curtain of lingering mist. Water dripped from the trees. Puddles reflected the gray sky, and the woods behind the McClarty house steamed like breath and glass. Red Ron hadn't moved. He was still laying at the front of Jamie's bed, his massive chest rising and falling in slow, steady rhythm. Jamie sat beside him, one hand buried in the thick fur of Ron's neck, humming a strange melody over and over again. Leah McClarty stood in the hallway, watching through the half-open door. Something about the dog made her uneasy. It was too still. Didn't behave like a real animal. Even when Jamie had spilled cereal that morning and the milk soaked into the floor, Ron hadn't twitched. He just stared. Later that day, as Leah tried calling the local shelter, no answer. And Aaron McClarty searched online for his missing dog notices. Unmatched. Jamie insisted on taking Red Ron for a walk through the town. They passed neighbors who stopped and stared. Some smiled politely. Others stepped back. Children pointed, whispering that the dog looked like a bear. One little girl burst into tears, just looking at him. And that was when they heard the sirens. It was the Kincaid house, just down the block. The sheriff's cruiser and an ambulance sat outside, lights spinning silently in the fog. Paramedics carried out a covered stretcher. Red Ron stopped walking. He planted his massive paws into the wet sidewalk and turned his head towards the house. Slowly, intently. Jamie looked up. "He's gone," he whispered. Aaron, confused, crouched down. "What do you mean, buddy?" Jamie kept looking straight ahead. "She screamed too loud. Ron told her to stop, but she didn't listen." Aaron stiffened. "What'd you say?" Jamie blinked. "Nothing," he said, like he hadn't spoken at all. Later that night, after they'd gotten home and the house had gone quiet again, Aaron checked the local news. Woman found dead in bathtub, eyes missing, no sign of struggle. He turned to look at Red Ron, lying in front of the fireplace. The dog was watching him. Not in the way a pet watches its owner, in the way a thing watches prey. Red Ron. Chapter 3. To the woods. Aaron McClarty didn't sleep that night. Neither did Leigh. Red Ron lay perfectly still on the living room rug, head down, eyes wide open, facing the stairs that led to Jamie's room. At one point, around 3 a.m., Aaron crept downstairs with the intention of putting the dog outside. He didn't get closer than 3 steps. Red Ron didn't growl, didn't move. Those red eyes stopped Aaron cold. They weren't the eyes of a pet. They weren't even the eyes of something alive. They were ancient. Aaron turned back, chilled to the core. was humming again, that same slow, eerie tune. It never varied. Same 5 notes over and over again. Leigh asked him where he had heard it. I didn't, Jamie said. It's his song. He said it helps him remember. Remember what? He asked. Jamie just smiled. That afternoon, Red Ron led Jamie into the woods. Aaron watched from the kitchen window as his son and the dog disappeared between the trees out back. Jamie hadn't taken a coat, hadn't even put on shoes, just walked, pale feet on pine needles, while Ron padded beside him, a silent guardian. Aaron waited 10 minutes, then 20. He grabbed the flashlight and followed. The forest behind their home stretched for miles, wrapping around Elder Hollow like a noose. It was quiet. No birds. No squirrels. Not even wind in the leaves. Just the crouch of Aaron's boots and the occasional snap of a branch. Then he heard it. That humming. Jamie's voice, faint and strange, weaving through the trees. Aaron moved faster. He found the boy standing in a small clearing, but head tilted to the sky, eyes closed. Red Ron sat beside him, perfectly still, facing Aaron. Aaron stepped forward. Jamie, what the hell are you doing here? Jamie didn't move. He just kept humming. Aaron reached for his son's shoulder. The moment he touched him, Red Ron stood up. It was fast, unnaturally fast. One moment lying down, the next looming, muscles taut, red eyes glowing in the forest gloom. Aaron froze. His hand trembled. Jamie finally opened his eyes and looked up at his father. He said I shouldn't be afraid, the boy said. He said the forest is waking up. He came first, but the rest are close. Aaron's mouth went dry. The rest of what? Jamie looked towards the trees. The old ones, the ones he used to serve. Aaron turned to look. There was nothing there. The woods had darkened. The shadows between the trees seemed deeper now. Something moving just outside the edges of sight. Shapes too tall to be human, bending between trunks without a sound. He grabbed Jamie's hand. We're going home, he said. Red Ron didn't follow. Not right away. He just watched and smiled. Yes, smiled. Then hadn't moved before opened slowly, bearing teeth far too long, too jagged, too numerous for any dog. Then he stepped back into the trees. and disappeared. Red Ron, Chapter 4. The Truth About Red Ron. Aaron didn't speak during the walk home. Jamie skipped along beside him, humming that haunting little tune under his breath. Not once did he ask why they were leaving the forest. Not once did he look back. By the time they reached the house, Red Ron was already there, waiting on the porch, completely dry. That night, Aaron sat up long after Leah and Jimmy had gone to bed. Red Ron lay in the hallway outside Jamie's room, head down, eyes locked on the staircase as if guarding something. Aaron poured himself a glass of whiskey, shaking hands. Something was wrong with that animal. Not just off, unnatural. It wasn't just his stillness or the way he moved. It was the feeling he brought with him, like the pressure in the air before a tornado, like gravity pulled differently when he was in the room. He needed answers. Aaron logged onto his old laptop and started digging. There were no missing dog reports that matched Ron's appearance. No breeds with that kind of eye color. No explanations for the smile. But the humming was something. He searched for variations of the melody Jamie had been repeating. After hours of frustration and deep forum rabbit holes, he found it. Recording. It was part of an old field tape archived by a folklore professor in the 1970s. The professor had been researching pre-contact oral traditions from isolated logging communities in the Pacific Northwest. According to our notes, the melody was called The Returning. Villagers would hum it when something in the forest woke up. They believed in a being they called Ronexth, the Red Herald, he who walks before the howling. Creature took the shape of a beast to prepare the land for the old ones. Ancient spirits were entities that fed on memory, identity, time itself. One note chilled Aaron the most. The beast is never summoned. It arrives when the land forgets itself. When the last tree groans and the old paths disappear, the Red Herald comes to clear the way. Aaron leaned back. The blood drained from his face. It wasn't a ghost story. It wasn't a coincidence. Red Ron was real. And worse, he wasn't alone. That night, Aaron woke to the sound of wood splitting. He rushed to the hallway where Jamie's door stood open. Ron was gone. The front door wide open. Outside, in the faint silver light of the moon, The forest was swaying, but there was no wind. At the edge of the trees stood Jamie. Behind him, tall shapes were moving in the darkness. And run. Chapter 5. The Ritual. Aaron sprinted barefoot across the cold grass, the air thick, something wet and sour. His son stood motionless at the tree line, framed by silver moonlight, staring into the forest. "Jamie!" he shouted. The boy turned slowly. His eyes looked wrong, dull, like someone else was blinking from inside them. "He's ready," Jamie said softly. Then he turned and walked into the woods. Aaron charged in after him, branches tearing at his arms and legs. The forest had changed. The ground was spongy and warm, like flesh under moss. The trees leaned in towards him as if listening, and everywhere that low, drowning hum echoed through the leaves. Jamie's tune, manipulated, layered, hundreds of voices humming in unison. Aaron pushed deeper, the flashlight in his hand sputtering, and then he saw it, hearing the one from before, but now it was full. Dozens of townspeople stood in a circle, barefoot, eyes glazed over, faces familiar. Alman, Rosier, even the high school principal staring ahead in silence. In the center stood Jamie, and beside him, Red Ron. The dog was changing. His body swelled and twisted, like a shadow pulled through broken glass. His spine rippled as limbs bent backwards. His mouth hung open, wide as a bear trap, drooling and black. Oily substance that hissed against the earth. And from the trees behind him, they came. Not walking, not crawling, but sliding, unfolding. Towering things with bark or skin and face, like screaming masks. Creatures that shouldn't exist. Cracked antlers, hollow torsos, too many fingers curling around the trunks of an ancient trees. Jimmy raised his hand. "He's opened the way," he said, his voice echoing wrong, deeper than his throat should allow. "Now we'll eat the hollow parts, what you left behind, what you forgot." Red Ron let out a sound, a bark that shattered the air like glass, a signal. The creatures surged forward. Aaron turned to run, but the woods shifted around him. Roots rose like ropes, twisting through the air, grabbing at his legs. Facing formed in the trees faces of the dead, the lost, the forgotten, all whispering in unison. Forest remembers. The last thing Aaron saw before darkness took him was his son, no longer smiling, no longer even human, watching him with cold, distant eyes. Red Ron sat beside him, head tilted, red eyes glowing with something older than hate. 3 weeks later, Elder Hollow is gone. The roads are swallowed. The satellite images, only trees, no structures, no people, no evidence that anything was ever there. Campers talk about strange lights, natural humming at night, tall shadows walking between pines, and something sometimes hikers see a boy standing at the edge of a clearing, still 10 years old, with a massive red-eyed dog sitting beside him. Chapter 6. After the Hollow. They say you can still hear it if the night is still enough. Soft humming, 5 notes, repeating endlessly like a lullaby, hammered by something that has no mouth, no memory, no mercy. Elder Hollow no longer appears on maps. Initially existed. Government records were scrubbed. Land surveyed labeled it Reclaimed Forest. Satellite images tell a different story. When the tree line is just right and the mist hasn't yet risen, there's a circular clearing visible, perfectly round, too symmetrical to be natural. Something made it. Some of the old locals, those who fled along before the storm, before Red Ron appeared, speak of the howling. Don't say much. Most speak of it at all. One, an old woman named Esther Brogan, a tape interview before disappearing, said, "He was a dog, but not a dog. He wore the shape of something loyal, something trusted. That's how they get in, through the cracks, things we love, through the things we stop remembering. It's the first, the Red Herald, and Jamie. Open the rest." Now, people vanish from the woods all across the Pacific Northwest. Entire families. Campgrounds are found abandoned, tents shredded, food untouched. At first, they blamed the bears and wolves, and people stopped blaming anything, because the patterns were too clean, silent. A new town was founded 100 miles south in what used to be logging country. Boomed fast. Tech workers, investors, tourists. He called it Ridge Point. 6 months in, a child went missing. Trace. 3 weeks later, another. Now, a new stray dog wandering the edge of the Ridge Point. Big, silent, red eyes. The children call him Ronnie. One of them said he hums to them when no one else is around. One of them drew a picture in school. A circle of trees, a boy with empty eyes, and a dog with a mouth that opens sideways. Behind them, tall things with faces made of bark and mouths full of teeth. Caption of the drawing: "We're making the forest new." Red Ron was never just a dog. It was the beginning. And the beginning always finds new places to start.